morning everybody. At the outset I would like to thank Shilpa for giving me this opportunity to present on cicatricial ectropion. What this talk will take you through is the etiopathogenesis of cicatricial ectropion, the symptoms and signs, the clinical tests that will help in management, the options that we have, and how to arrive at a logical approach for what we should do for your patient. As we've seen since morning, what ectropion means is outward turning of the eyelid margin away from the globe. For cicatricial ectropion, you can have ectropion affecting the upper eyelid, as you see over here, or ectropion affecting the lower eyelids. There is one concept that I have really appreciated and has improved my understanding of endopion and ectropion, and it doesn't necessarily apply only to cicatricial ectropion. In fact, it applies more to involution and parallel, but I would like to share that concept nonetheless. Now, if you were to compare your eyelid to a tennis net, then this is your eyelid tissue proper, and the two poles would be your medial and the lateral tangent line. Now, as long as the poles are firmly grounded, the net is straight. It doesn't tend to flop in either port. If these poles were to become weak, then the net could flop in one port or the other, and in which port it flops depends on the direction of the wind. That wind in the eyelid is your forces in the anterior and the posterior lamella. So suppose these canthal tendi were weak and the poles were weak, and the anterior lamella was stronger, you would end up having an ectropion as against having an entropion if the posterior lamella was stronger. In cicatricial ectropion, you could have chemical injuries which can cause the ectropion, or it could be due to excessive excision of skin following procedures like blepharoplasty, especially in the lower eyelid. It could be post-traumatic, or it could be due to certain chronic skin disorders like ichthyosis. Besides the usual pinch test and the snap test and all the other tests that we do for medial and lateral canthal tendon, also the test to look at secondary effect on the eyelid, there is another thing that is important in cicatricial ectropion, and this is what we call as a forced upward traction test. What this does is it sees what is the amount of laxity in your eyelid, or what is the amount of smoothness with which your lower eyelid moves upwards. This is mainly for lower eyelid. If you could see the above picture, then this is a normal person in whom on both the sides with forceful pressure you are able to cover the entire cornea while the person is looking straight. However, a person who has cicatricial ectropion, you will be able to see that with maximum force also you are not able to push that eyelid up. Well, of course, this is what cicatricial ectropion means, but this gives you an idea of how strong the cicatrix is and what procedure you would need for that. In upper eyelid, when you have a cicatricial ectropion, the major problem becomes exposure of the cornea. In lower eyelid, it might not be such a big problem. When we look at management options, then the first thing that comes to mind is a full thickness skin graft. For upper eyelid, a skin graft remains the most viable option. There are several sites from which you can harvest the skin. If the other eyelid is normal, then the contralateral upper eyelid skin is supposed to be the best color and texture match for the eyelid which you are wanting to treat. Usually you leave a reserve of about 20 mm as a vertical tarsal height, as a vertical height on the other side. What that means is, from the eyebrow to the center part of the eyelid, you leave 20 mm of skin. The rest of it all you can excise and use as a full thickness skin graft. For skin grafting, the procedure is relatively simple, and what you need to do is excise that part of skin. If you want to undertake other procedures like shortening the eyelid, then those can be done simultaneously. Once you've harvested the skin, you reapply it at the place where you want to graft it. Usually you oversize the graft vertically. Horizontal oversizing is not really required because most of the contraction of the graft is vertical. So if this is your defect, if this measures about 10 mm, then it's always good to take about 15 mm of skin vertically because there will be vertical contraction post-operatively. You suture the graft with the help of 60 vital or 60 silk sutures. You can place bolsters or you can place one large bolster over the graft to give it firm pressure. And at the end of the procedure, you can make certain stab wounds over the graft so that whatever serous collection is there comes out through those wounds. This is a patient who has undergone a skin graft for ophthalmic ectropion, and you can see over here. These are pre-operative pictures where you see that there is legophthalmos on closure of the eyelid and downgaze lid lag, which improves substantially following grafting of skin. What could have been done better over here was to divide the skin into two parts, give one of those parts as a pre-septal graft and the other one as a pre-tarsal graft, and that would have helped to have a post-operative eyelid contour like the other side. That might have helped to give a lid fold on this side as well, which is missing. Certain other options that we have are transposition flaps. They are very important because they not only carry the arterial supply but also the venous drainage. They are easily harvested. It is usually a one-step procedure and they resemble the color and texture of the surrounding skin perfectly. These are known as monopedicle flaps. So this is a patient who has a lower eyelid ectropion and a flap has been harvested from the upper eyelid, as you see over here. This is the flap which has been harvested from the upper eyelid and then it would be transposed to the lower eyelid. What you need to remember is that the positioning or the marking for these patients is the most important. Your lower marking usually goes along the line of incision where you want the closure, and the upper marking is the medial point is always higher than the lower marking, so that when you transpose the flap, there is not much dog earing. This is how it would look post-operatively once you have transposed the flap down and have sutured it. So you have created a flap like this, transposed it to the lower eyelid and sutured it. This flap with itself carries the blood vessels and hence is considered a little superior to skin grafting. This is a patient who has predominantly a lateral ectropion in the lower eyelid. These patients are excellent for monopedicle flaps as against skin graft. Here you can see that this is the flap which has been harvested from the upper eyelid over here, from the same upper eyelid, transposed down, and the patient does relatively well post-operatively. In certain situations, if the amount of anterior lamella that you get with the flap is not sufficient, you can add it out by a skin graft. So this is a patient pre-operatively has a medial ectropion. We've done a flap and brought down skin from the upper eyelid, but that was not sufficient and we've added more skin from the contralateral upper eyelid as a pre-positional skin graft underneath the flap. So this is a patient who's undergone both a flap as well as a graft. Another similar condition of a patient who has a predominantly lateral ectropion. In such patients, you will see that the canthus is very well maintained. These are excellent cases for again a flap. The flap is brought down from the upper eyelid and the remainder of the defect which is there after releasing the cicatrix is usually filled with a skin graft. In this person, the contralateral upper eyelid skin graft alone was not sufficient, hence skin has also been taken from the retroauricular area, as you see over here. In my practice, most of the cases of ectropion, especially the lateral ectropions, are very well managed with monopedicle flaps, and hence I do not do Z-plasty as a primary treatment unless, of course, it is really required. However, we just go through the principle of Z-plasty. What it does is it elongates the line where your scarring is. So if your scarring is between point A and point B over here, once you make a Z with the arms of the Z at 60 degrees to that line of scarring and transpose this flap downwards and this flap upwards, you would have elongated that line of scarring as you can see over here. And that is how it helps in the correction of ectropion. This is a patient who has lower eyelid ectropion laterally. I would have preferred to do a monopedicle flap again over here. However, in this case, we've done multiple Z-plasty and you can see that these are the several Zs which have been made and transposed, and that has corrected the lower eyelid ectropion. There are certain cases of congenital ectropion like ichthyosis. Ichthyosis is a generalized skin condition where the entire skin on the entire body is excessively keratinized. In such patients, there is no donor skin available from the patient and you can use allograft from the mother or the father, preferably from the mother. It is very important to treat these kinds of ectropia because you can see that they lead to severe eyeball complications. This is a child who has undergone for congenital ichthyosis and the skin has been harvested from the mother, and post-operatively with the use of emollients, we've been able to improve the texture of the surrounding skin as well as correctly ectropion. This is again another patient who has undergone repair with maternal skin grafting. Tarsal ectropion is a condition that Dr. Grover touched upon where the entire tarsus is upside down, and in such patients it has been said that the anterior lamella is severely deficient. However, it's an age-related thing. As the child grows, it is expected that the anterior lamella will grow and there will be some amount of improvement in this condition. So what we can do temporarily for such patients is to inject a filler agent. Your hyaluronic acid has been used for sort of lengthening the anterior lamella for the patient, as you can see over here. And along with that, to give some amount of support to the anterior lamella, extreme lateral tarsorrhaphy has been done and the ectropion has been corrected. These are the intraoperative photographs while the patient is undergoing filler agent injection and a tarsorrhaphy being done, and this is the post-operative result for the patient on table. Microblathon is a very rare condition where again the vertical height of the eyelid is much shorter compared to the other side, and it gives rise to symptoms of downgaze, lid lag and exposure keratopathy along with lagophthalmos. These patients again can be managed with a filler agent because this condition is usually a little temporary and tends to improve as the patient grows. As the mid-phase grows, we expect that the skin in the upper eyelid will also lengthen a little bit, and that would eventually improve the post-operative outcome for the patient. I would at this point of time like to thank all my three teachers, Dr. Manavar, Dr. Milind Nayak, on behalf of whom I am making this presentation over here, and Dr. Javed Ali from Medicare Institute. Thank you very much.